All right, we're live. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Alan Corey, Real Estate Maxi, and joining me is,
Lauren Keen Almond. Hey guys.
um, this is cool. We should probably give a name to this show, but basically, Lauren and I talk real estate all the time, and we just said, why don't we live stream our conversations about different things in real estate? So, today's we want to focus on where to invest, and that's a question because a lot of times people are saying, well, it's too expensive to invest in my city. And I said, well, you don't have to invest in your city. I've invested in different states away. How about you, Lauren? Are you all sort of drivable? Has that been your investments?
Yep, I am all drivable. I am lucky enough to have been born in the Tampa Bay area. And so the Tampa Bay area has been appreciating pretty much my whole life, with the exception of obviously the 2008 situation. We also have a great short term rental market here. So I'm able to do that. The farthest my portfolio goes is about 2.5 hours north on US 19. So
That's far. Yeah.
it's pretty far. I mean, you're going, if you're going there, you're going for a weekend. Like, you're not
Yeah.
going because somebody needs some toilet paper.
Right. I actually find that those properties I like better because if there is an issue, I if it's a 30-minute drive, it becomes my issue. If it's an over an hour
Yes.
drive, then it's not my issue.
Right.
And so I, in many ways, sometimes would want to invest an hour or more just so that I can lean on my property manager or the systems in place or the software and the vendors that are supposed to, cover that property. Is that how do you self-manage the one that's 2 hours away, 2.5 hours?
I do self-manage it. I got a text from my cleaner. So it's a 6-unit apartment building. 4 are short-term rentals, 2 are long-term rentals. So naturally, with that many short-term rentals, my cleaner is there almost every day. And I got a text from her this morning that said, "Hey, the garbage guys didn't pick up the garbage." Perfect. Okay, cool. I'll
Yeah.
call them. So she's really my eyes there. Also, something that's a little underrated about having long-term rentals and short-term rentals together is my long-term tenants also sort of keep an eye on the place. They've been there for a very long time. I inherited them a couple of years ago when I bought it, and so they're really invested in it. I've had, let's say, a guest, I had like a gap of like 4 days and the cleaner wasn't going to be there for, we had long stays in the other units. I asked one of the tenants, I have a electronic lock, so I opened the lock and I was on the phone with them like, "Hey, can you just walk through?" I like to have a walkthrough if the place has been vacant for a little while. Just, I don't know if there'd be like a leak or like a dead bug or something. So,
Right.
I asked him to walk through it. So that's that. And then my uncle lives in that county, he's about 35 minutes away though. So, but he is a handyman by trade. So you're absolutely right. Something might be tempting. My husband especially would be tempted to go fix something himself, and that's really not an option there, which is nice. It forces you to systematize and kind of trust people and put your trust in them. And I have found, for the most part in this business, when you put your trust in someone, they almost kind of rise to that occasion.
Yeah. I sort of created that situation. I had a couple duplexes in Brooklyn, New York, and I moved back to Atlanta. And for several years, I kept those properties. And it was a challenge, I guess, to property remote long distance. But yeah, you'd get a phone call, "Hey, the pipes are frozen." Like, okay,
Mhm.
well, I'll call a plumber. Like, I was just the phone operator. Like, okay, now I got an email that this isn't working, and then I would call someone else, which was great. It was fun, but it was definitely a trust situation because that guy, whoever with that quote, like I didn't want to like put my tenant through 3 quotes to deal with something where they don't have water. So whatever that guy charged,
Yeah.
that guy, whatever the first guy that could come, whatever he charged me, I just had to deal with it. But in my head, that's like, okay, well, I'm not paying for a property manager. Property manager probably would have maybe even prevented this, or they've got cheaper vendors, or
Right.
I wouldn't have been involved. But now I'm sort of in the fully property management camp, and
Right.
I suggest everyone buy something with the property manager budgeted in, because you're going to fall out of love with real estate if you are always dealing with those fixes. Like, no one's ever happy dealing with those things. And I like to focus on acquisitions and finding new deals. And if I'm trying to change a light bulb or someone lock themselves out, it completely disrupts my day. And if I would have just outsourced that, I would have made so much more money because I'm finding the next deal and the next deal kind of thing.
Right. That's definitely true for LTRs. I mean, I don't know, that's like 8 to 12% or so. With STRs, some of these companies charge 25%. And so I've just that's a big hit. We're talking like that would have been like $50,000 last year or something for me. And I'm willing to do my 20 to 30 minutes a day to keep that.
Yeah, right, right. Yeah. No, short-term rental is a little bit more because I feel like it's like you could say it all the time. It's a hospitality business, and so you have to be a little
Absolutely.
bit, yeah. And you're also providing the furniture, and it's yeah. There's a lot more expenses involved, and that I think that's why the
Right.
property manager has there's more for them to do and
What I'm
react to.
learning is having just bought a place. We just bought this duplex that we're in the they were living here. One person, they owned it 50-50. One person was upstairs, one person was downstairs. And so we're doing almost like a tenant turnover is what it feels like, painting, cleaning, getting ready to go from one person to another person, even though it was the owner. And we were gonna do long-term rent, and it's like beautiful in there. And we've decided we're gonna short-term rent it because I
Oh,
just don't
nice.
want to put a tenant in there. And we don't want, well, we did try to rent it for like a
Yeah,
week, didn't get as
yeah,
many inquiries as we thought, and we're at market rent. So we're gonna short-term rent it because like I just can't stand the idea of how much damage a long-term tenant could do in 6 months or a year versus short-term. It's hard for them
yeah.
to do really much damage. It's a bunch of little things, I think, more than like one big fell swoop.
Right. And so you found that there's not because people are getting rated on their stay, they don't really damage your property as much.
Yeah, and they're not there. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Yeah.
they're like for the most part they're out at different, restaurants, or they're out at the beach, or and they're there like 2 or 3 days. I mean, some people stay one night, they come in, they drive in, then they leave.
Just to sleep.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
they're just not much. I mean, but like you said with the furniture, you can end up like having to fix like a chair, which is not something you
Yeah.
would normally have to do.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. That's a whole nother vendor. But okay. So this is for location.
Yep.
Uh, People who want to invest maybe out of state because they're in the high cost of living city, typically the stats that I look at, and these are free stats on census.gov, but I like to look at a city's population growth. Obviously, a growing city usually has housing demands. I like income growth in that city. Sometimes stagnant, I'm okay with, depending if the property, the numbers make sense. But those are great signs. A growing city tells me that I'll probably don't have much vacancy and that the rent will probably go up and the appreciation will go up in housing prices. And you can find those in cities all over the place. And I know the Southeast and the Midwest are hotbeds for long distance real estate investing. You can buy properties. Duplexes for under $100,000. People don't realize that. Like, yeah,
I know. Yep, it's so true. Yeah, that's a good point. And so for census.gov, I've looked at that. It's been a little while because I've just been sort of buying in my area. Even once you do that, though, how do you know which cities to be looking up on there even?
yeah. To me, Yeah, that's a good point. Typically there's news organizations who do annual, you know, fastest growing small town cities and stuff. So if you just Google those phrases, it's typically someone's already done the research for you and they pulled it from that same data from census.gov.
Okay.
So that will usually narrow it down to 20 cities. But I think that doesn't necessarily mean only invest in those 20 cities because now those 20 cities are going to have probably the most competition. But
Right.
but you can kind of get an idea. Well, this is an hour from one of those cities. Probably there's some satellite things. I like personally to invest within 2 hours or less of a major airport,
Yeah.
because even if everyone just starts working from home and just you're connected to a city. If you're a major airport's like 2 hours away, like you can be in the cheaper ring but still have a connection into the city. So I really like that. And this is going to maybe go against the grain. I don't like investing in good school districts. Good school districts you pay a premium for, and that buyers who are primary residence buyers will pay a premium to live there.
Right.
Typically, the rent doesn't offset that premium price. All my properties that are adjacent to a good school district, I bought them at a deep discount because of the schools, but the rent is not discounted as much as the purchase price discount, and so I actually get way more cash flow. And in my eyes, a 10 school, it can go down to 9. Most likely it'll always stay at 10. But if you're in like a 5 school district, man, if that goes up to a 7 or an 8, then my property doubled or tripled in value, right?
That's
So
interesting. Yeah, and you have kids, so I think that's saying
yeah.
a lot because, like, I'm like, I don't know anything about school districts.
Yeah, right. To me, it's whenever I'm like, why is this so much more expensive? And it's
Right.
2 miles from that property. It's always the school district. I'm like, yeah. Then
Yeah.
I add it to my filter. Get this, school filter. Yeah, this school I don't want to buy. Don't show me the shirts. The results for kind of thing.
In this area, which is Pinellas County, Florida, so very close to Tampa, there's a town here. It's called Palm Harbor, and it's just like that. You look at any of the houses right around, you're like, what is going on? And then I always am like, oh, duh. Those are the people. They've got the IB program. They've got all these other kind of magnets and stuff, and they're really highly rated. And I was like, well, what if I have a kid? Maybe I should buy there.
Yeah, right. What happens, what I see is like there'll be a divorced couple where one lives in the good school district, one doesn't, or grandparents come and they'll live in the cheaper district, or vice versa. And so it's always like people who get the benefits in some ways in the good school district, or there's the nicer town and they got the good restaurants, but they're paying cheaper rent because they're prudent, or their budget allows for it, or whatnot, kind of thing. Or they don't
Yeah,
have
so
kids. Yeah.
you can be adjacent to it. I've always so when everybody's talking about investing out of state, I know like theoretically you can get even like your first one out of state, but that is nerve-wracking to me. But did you do your first one in state? You were living near there, weren't you?
Yeah, my first 5 were, and I was living in Brooklyn, New York, and they were all in Brooklyn, New York. So that was, I didn't know any better. I didn't even, that wasn't a, that didn't, I didn't know that was possible, at that
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
But then I had a friend reach out and we bought a property together in Charleston, South Carolina when I was living in New York. He lived in Charleston, so that made me feel comfortable that he knew the area and stuff. And then it wasn't until I moved to Atlanta and I had those properties in New York, did that remotely. And then I started buying properties about an hour south from me, but that was I wasn't willing to drive an hour. So I had a local property management company handle it all. And I grew a portfolio of 50 single family homes an hour from me. I never visited. I never knew the tenants. I never knew anything. And that was great. And I bought those strictly on cash flow because on average, I bought each of those homes for $40,000, and they had a tenant paying $450 each. And these were livable homes. Sure, they had some deferred maintenance and everything. But this is an hour from Atlanta, and everyone is like, there's no such thing as $100,000 homes, or they're shacks or whatever. And these were nice, 3-2s that family lived in and been there for 10 years, 20 years. And, they exist. You just don't know it exists because you don't spend time in a little town an hour from wherever you live, kind of thing.
So once you determine your buy box, which you said is growing city, growing in population, maybe growing in income within 2 hours of a major airport. Once you establish all of that, you mentioned you had a friend in Charleston. Do you need somebody that's that close to you there? Or are there other ways to build teams in those different areas that you don't have to be that personally close to?
Yeah. I think that was a rare story, that I don't really look to having friends, but I think because it's that trust, it's finding, I say rock stars hang out with rock stars. So you find that rock star realtor and they're going to know the rock star property manager, and that they're going to know the rock star contractor and the mortgage lender. And like they all, especially if they're in small towns, it's definitely a network of people who went to the same school as each other. They've all dated each other. It's every single person I've ever talked to, they're like, oh, I know Jared, and kind of thing. Cause, that's what small towns are like. Right. So, that's why I got in with the number one property manager, who also happened to be a realtor himself. And he knew all the investors in town because runs a property management company. And then whenever his investors were wanting to retire or sell a property, he would call me first, and I'd buy it because he wanted to keep it in house.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and then
Smart.
occasionally the wholesalers started calling me, and then I would call him and I say, "What do you think about this house?" And they're like, "Oh, is that Dennis's house? Oh, I didn't know, whatever." I'm like, "Yeah, and I've got it under contract." "Yeah, man, that's great. Okay, well, he's got 3 others. Want me to reach him and see if you want the 3 others?" "Yeah." Like, and so it was. I became that in that small town network kind of thing where they he's running a good business. He wants as many properties in his property management company. He doesn't want people to he's also a realtor. He's trying to find me deals, and
Right.
he could talk the language because he was also an investor himself too. So
Huge.
he's not like trying to sell me something. He's like, that doesn't make sense. He'd be like, "Alan, this doesn't make sense, but I think I can get him down to this price because I know you like to buy at this price." "Okay, great. Yeah, let's make an offer." Yeah.
What a
So,
gem of a person. And guys, we have Aloha from Hawaii here. Hello.
hello.
And speaking of out of state, man, and that's like practically out of country, out of contiguous continental United States. If you guys have questions, I don't think you can ask questions on Twitter, but if you're on either LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube, we should be able to.
Yeah, ask some questions and we'll answer it. I've heard you say this before, and I want to hear you say it again about your sort of sweet spot with short-term rentals, and why you don't like to buy in the huge famous vacation areas.
Yeah, so you can divide up those markets a bunch of different ways. How I like to think of them as the national destinations. So kind of people will fly to go there. So it's really like Joshua Tree, for example. It started out as like people from LA went to Joshua Tree on the weekends or whatever, but that over time has become this kind of national hotspot. Closer to me, closer to even you than me, is Gatlinburg, Tennessee, or generally the Blue Ridge Mountains. There's also Destin, which is in the Panhandle here of Florida. There's some of these kind of national hotspot areas. And then you can also get sort of instead of like a tourism hotspot, just a travel hotspot. So maybe you've got some, Chicago or something like that, where you're going to have people visiting people that they know, maybe business travel, things like that. And then you have what I like, which I think of as the regional tourism hotspots. The level kind of below that would be, I think of it as like just rural or other, just kind of a random town where some people randomly go. It's probably going to be all people visiting locals, basically. Nobody's going on vacation there. I haven't really tapped into that market yet, although I know some people that successfully have. Mine are going to be those regional tourism. So for me, it's the idea is if there's a recession, what's going to drop off first? I think it's going to be the ones that people are flying to. And I think maybe those people who would normally, we were going to fly to Joshua Tree, we're in Florida, we were going to fly to Gatlinburg. Instead, let's stay locally. Let's see what's around here and let's drive there. And we notice this particularly in the summer. Almost everybody we get in the summer is practically local. And by local, I mean Florida. They're driving a couple hours and they're going to hang out in our regional areas of the Tampa Bay area, whether that's Tarpon Springs or maybe up north in Cedar Key where my apartment building is. So that's how I think of kind of the regional driving. I think of it as, and also you're not going to be, there's some big, I don't know if you would call them syndications or portfolios, or there's some big boys out there that are buying up and really heavily, putting tons of money, great designers. Their goal is to be top 1% of their markets. I'm not going to compete with them, by choice. And also I couldn't, even if I tried, probably, right? Like I'm not going to go play basketball against Michael Jordan. So I like these regional areas. And someone else that I was talking to for my podcast was calling them kind of undiscovered areas. So places where people maybe don't even really know about them or think about them as an investment, but people do think about them to travel. And so that's kind of I think of them as regional driving spots.
Yeah. Well, we got another hello from Facebook. So if you got any questions, please answer us, or please.
And we're talking about locations, but if you guys have other real estate questions, we'll answer this too.
Yeah, locations comes up a lot. Trying to think of some of the other things that I sort of look for is, and this is also creates controversy, but if you have to lean on a property manager that's out of state, I always say that look for property managers that have bad reviews. and what I mean by that is because people who leave reviews for property managers, it's usually people complaining
Tenants.
about, tenants complaining about them doing what's in the lease, right? It'll
Yeah.
say, hey, this person charged me a late fee, or they wouldn't let me bring my dog in, or whatever it is. And I'm like, yeah, they're following the rules. And it's never landlords that will leave a review for a property manager. If there are a few, but you got to remember there's going to be hundreds of tenant per each one landlord. So I don't think I've ever seen any property management company that has higher than a 3-star rating. And I was trying to figure out why, and then I realized why. It's always tenants
That's
leaving. Yeah,
that's so funny. And kind of a contrarian take, but I love it. Like, how do you know if they're a good property manager? How do you know they're not going to be like crappy? Do you just like get references? Or are there certain questions you like to ask?
Yeah, I think that's the only thing you can do is to ask them for like 3 or 4 other investors that they are managing. Of course, everyone would give you their top 3 or top 4 that they know are going to say nice things, but it's really sort of, to me, it's communication is key. If they don't have some sort of software system that you can log into portal and you can see it real time in anything, uh, uh, then I would say stay away from them. Like it's the ones that they do it in Excel, and you have to call them for updates. That's too mom and pop. Those are never going to work out, and you won't have enough oversight to even know if things are out of whack. But a person who runs a property management business, they want those software because that makes their life easier. It makes the tenants can just pay on time. They're not having to go check their mailbox and deposit checks, right? So to me, it's hard to hide things in the system where I can read what the tenants are writing. I can see the response times. I can see the receipts being uploaded. So it earns trust on both sides.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I'm so much more systematized on the STR side than the LTR side. That like I'm my own mom and pop property manager for my LTRs. It's like it's texting the tenants, right? Of course, I send the certified mail for official correspondence and stuff, but it's like the one guy never answers when I call, so I call his daughter and then she calls him. It's like it's the most like ass backwards thing you've ever seen in your life. But and then on STRs, I have all of that. I have like automated communications, automatic locks. Nobody's locking themselves out. They basically can't. They have it in writing in their phone. And then I have all the property management software and all of those things. And I just haven't systematized on the LTR side because I only have 3 and they're all inherited. So I'd have to retrain them anyways.
Yeah. So yeah, and if you don't know, STR is short-term rental, LTR is long-term rentals. So a little bit different way of managing properties. But would you ever buy something, Lauren, out of state, short-term rental or long-term rental?
So I'm actually going to visit Tom, the Frugal Gay, in September, and we're going to his short-term rental in Toledo, Ohio. And the idea there for us is some diversification. I don't know if I'll be able to talk my husband into it, but diversification because in Florida, I mean, it's not a secret that the hurricanes are bad, the insurance is going up, to try to diversify away from that a little bit, do more of a cash flow play, not an appreciation play. And I'm going to try to buy a duplex. I'm going to try to do STR one side, LTR the other. And then the short-term rental side, the Airbnb side, if you will, I can go stay there. It's so miserably hot here in the Tampa Bay area in August. I mean, June, you're like, it's hot, but like, maybe we're still riding the high of like March at that point and how great it was and how beautiful. July, you've got 4th of July, you're going on the boat a lot. By August, you're burnt out. September, you're burnt out. So we're going to go at that time of the year, go to Toledo, Ohio, and see, and then think about escaping Florida for 1 month every summer and going there. So we're definitely thinking about it. I like the pricing there. I mean, I can like pay cash for something pretty easily. I can't pay cash for anything here in Florida. I mean, my properties were, they're between $400,000 and $600,000.
Yeah. I got a question on Twitter, and we got another one on YouTube here, but the Twitter question was, what's a good market and where do you invest for BRRRRs, which is buy, renovate, refinance, rent out, and repeat, which is basically buying a fixer-upper, fixing it up, renting it, and then you pull all the cash out. To me, besides obviously a growing population, because there's going to be housing demands, I would look at cities that probably have lower than average days on market for houses. So let's say less than 30 days tells me that if an average listing takes less than 30 days to sell, that's probably still a seller's market. And that means people are bidding and moving quickly or compromising on homes. So if you're wanting to acquire some properties to BRRRR, you'll probably always find tenants if the housing shortage, but also you'll probably have a lot of good comps because I would imagine those houses are going to be selling for higher and higher based on those days on market. So that's sort of how I would look at the BRRRR market. And
BRRRRs are very, very complicated. I mean, in a lot of ways, you win the BRRRR on the buy,
yes,
but you also need to be very efficient with your rehab, your renovation. And you also need to know what you're doing and what matters, what's going to add value in an appraisal. I think a lot of people, they end up doing things maybe that they like, or they do a little extra here, a little extra there, and it doesn't show up in the appraisal, and then they get kind of underwater on the reno portion of it. And then you could get a bad appraisal on the back end. They're very complicated. I've done one, and we put 150 in. We got 100 back out, which I sort of thought was fine because we were able to buy another property with that. So that's the thing too with BRRRRs that I think people should be thinking about. The idea, like the sexy thing, is get all of your money back out.
right.
If you get most of it, I kind of think that's maybe
totally.
it's not a home run, but that's a triple right there.
It's like buying a renovated house with less than 20% down. Why not? Yeah, that's great. All right. So Julio from YouTube has a question. Would midterm rentals work even if nearby hospital is only a level 1 trauma instead of a level 2 trauma?
Or
I don't know the
other way around.
differences.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Julio. I don't know. In short of calling the hospital and figuring out how many maybe like traveling nurses they're hiring, or maybe you can look at their job boards and see how many openings they have and if they're doing that. Yeah, nearby hospitals level 2, not level 1. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know how far away. Can you tell me, Julio, how far away the level 1 is then from that level 2?
Explain it to me. There's traveling nurses only go to one level?
I think they would go to any of them, but I think level 1s are just, those are going to be there's just gonna be more people there. They're bigger, and I don't know.
Well, to me, I know nothing about the levels of hospitals, but if you're in a level 2, which sounds more traumatic, you're probably staying longer, and your family's going to stay longer, and probably want a midterm rental, would be my guess. But Julio's telling us,
more beds.
More beds in level 1, meaning more patients. Okay. So I think there's business in both. Probably whatever one creates the most business is probably going to be more expensive because of it. That's my thought process.
I think MTR could probably work. You should find Tampa General. Yeah. Lakeland. Yeah. Okay. Well, if you're talking about the difference between Tampa and Lakeland, I think that's far enough that the MTRs would probably work in either place. Yeah. Tampa General Hospital level 1, Lakeland. Yeah. Okay. So in this particular area, I would go MTR in Lakeland all day. I would definitely. MTR, guys, is midterm rental. It's kind of like basically 30 days, less than 6 months. There's a lot of traveling nurses. That's why we're talking about hospitals that do this. I would probably do Lakeland because, I mean, you probably can get in price point wise better than you can get into Tampa. And I just like Lakeland, and I grew up not liking Tampa that much because of traffic.
So to me, who I'm not familiar, Lakeland sounds like a smaller city than Tampa because I haven't heard of Lakeland, right?
It's like in between Orlando and Tampa. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's where the level 2s are. I guess level 1's it has more beds, so it's got to be closer to the urban core.
They probably airlift people to Tampa, right? They're not going to airlift people to Lakeland.
Yeah. And then, okay. So the answer here is there's not one that's better than the other. Is that what I heard you?
I don't think so. I think it's just how badly is somebody hurt.
Yeah. Okay. So you can make MTR rentals to both. And I think that goes to maybe if you're looking at empty rent, like I like to invest long-term rentals that are within 2 hours of a major airport. If you're midterm rentals with was it maybe 10 minutes from a hospital you would want for a midterm rental, or 15 minutes? What enough where you could do a daily visit, but also probably don't feel like you're in a sort of in a hospital district. You probably want a little change of scenery. All right. So Trey here. Dimitri, how you doing, buddy? Is a question on Facebook. Ever consider using tiny homes as a short-term rental? And I'll say this: Lauren has a very tiny home as a short-term rental. You want to share that?
I do. I was gonna see. Can I share my screen or no? Maybe not.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Present. There we go. Slide share screen. Share screen is easiest with 2 monitors. Okay, I understand that. Thank you. I only have. Can you see this or no?
I do not see it. Have you shared your
share.
screen? Oh, I know what I have to do. Watch this. Okay, now share it.
All right, share. There we go. Can you see this?
Yes, your Acorn Cottage.
Acorn Cottage. So yes, I should try to find this review for you where the person's like, whatever. So cozy and private Acorn Cottage. So like I think absolutely people like tiny homes, but I'm using words like cozy and private. I'm telling people it's really small, it's good for like a couple of people. We have a queen bed, we don't have a king, and then I'm also just highlighting the other areas, because you're basically not going to want to spend time in there. And then also just have your pictures be, basically this is it. Like this is how small this place is. This is what it looks like. Doesn't have a wall unit anymore, but so yeah, I think tiny homes definitely work. They're definitely going to be more affordable.
Well, I was
go there.
You have an even tinier home in the driveway.
Oh, the camper. Yeah, I have a camper too. Yes, that's true. I have a camper in there. It's like, yeah, I have a camper in my driveway with sewer. Yeah, that's super small. And we tell people it's good for like 1, maybe 2 people if you're really close and really like each other. And I tell them the measurements, like it's 13.5 by 7.5 or whatever. And it's like 90 something square feet. And yeah, I think you can definitely have tiny homes. I did have a review recently where the person was like, this place is really tiny. And I was like, okay. Well,
yeah. But they also have a tiny budget, so it works out well,
like here we're paying so little. Come on.
Yeah. I love the strategy, and I think turn anything you can into short-term rental, but also turn anything you can into multifamily. Like park a camper in your driveway, put a tiny home in the back, and if the code doesn't want it, keep it on wheels so that it's a parked a tiny home or whatever, rather than it's temporary, kind of thing.
Right.
So I think there's definitely ways to
definitely do tiny homes. Just put everywhere how small it is and use words like cozy and private and use tiny home. Just make sure that people are really aware. That's my first review in like 100 where people were surprised it was the size it was.
All right. Anything else to cover location wise that we haven't, Lauren?
I think I like, so location wise, if you can make something cash flow, even if it's say more desirable cash flow in other places, but if you can make something cash flow or something cash flows locally, and that's even like just a couple $100 for your first deal, I would say try local to get your feet wet, to get an understanding. Your first deal, we say this a lot in this space, your first deal may not be a home run. It might be. It might just be sort of a base hit, but you're going to learn so much more, I think, and you're going to be a lot more comfortable taking action, and then going through with the purchase of your first deal if it is local. So even if I could cash flow or get a better cash on cash return in another state, I still might recommend going local to start. But if you absolutely can't get anything to cash flow near you, don't let that be an excuse for not getting into real estate investing.
And I think one other sort of way to reduce your risk in any of this is have options. If you're looking at a property as a short-term rental, does it make money as a short-term rental? Obviously, yes, it should. But can you pivot into a long-term rental and it'll still make you some money? Maybe not as much, but at least it's still profitable. Can you pivot into, renovating it and you could sell it for more? Like if you can have options so that if one idea doesn't work out, or a town says we're not doing short-term rental anymore, or you can't find a good property manager that manages that type of property, can you pivot and still have another strategy with that property to make the numbers work? And to me, that feels like risk-free sort of investing because I have so many outs that this will make money. This will make money, but not as much. This will make money, not as much, but and then this is where I break even, my fourth choice kind of thing.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say to Julio too. We're talking about the level 1 trauma in Tampa, level 2 trauma in Lakeland, which is an hour away, 45 minutes away, depending on traffic. If you can buy something there, try the MTR. If the MTR doesn't work, can you LTR and still cash flow?
Yeah. And if you guys are listening, Lauren is Adulting is Easy on Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn. I'm Real Estate Maxi on all those channels. You can ask questions, and please follow us on both of those. And maybe we'll end with Julio's last question here, Lauren. Anything you do differently to analyze a house hack that's not currently cash flowing in the first year?
Yeah, you analyze a house hack as if you weren't living there. And then what I would do is I would compare what you are paying versus what you would pay to rent. So if let's say it's a duplex and you would your normal rent would be $2,000 and you're collecting maybe you're paying, once you net what you're collecting from the one side versus what you're paying, maybe that's only $1,000, then you're good there as long as the duplex cash flows once you move out. So I would kind of look at both of those two things. I don't know, Alan, what do you think?
No, yeah, same answer. Like if you're renting for $2,000 and this house hack now costs you $1,000, sure, it's not cash flowing in that you're living for free, but you've reduced your housing expenses by half. Like, yeah, do that all day. And then don't move out until that place that you move out will cover your entire mortgage and more, sort of situation. So that's when you're ready to go house hack another property, when you can make that one fully sort of cover your mortgage. And it might take 2 years, 3 years. It might take updating a property. It might take just natural home appreciation. It might take interest rates dropping and you doing a refinance. But be happy that you're not paying $2,000 of rent, and like everyone else, you're paying $1,000, and that someone is actually helping you pay down a huge mortgage, principal, and your house is appreciating. So you're doing things right if you're in that situation.
And Alan, you've made the point before that if you're going to own or occupy, especially a small multifamily, you are more competitive. You can bring a more competitive offer basically than the investors can, because your interest rate is lower, your down payment is lower, so you can pay a little more. And so you actually have a better chance of beating out some investors for those properties. Is that right?
Yeah, because investors who are not going to live in it, they're just going to bid up to a number where it cash flows, right? They're not going to overpay to buy a property that doesn't cash flow. The only people that would do that are the primary owner occupiers who will live in one unit. So those people are always going to pay them the most for a property. Mm-hmm. And again, because it still makes sense because they're paying $1,000 a month offset, by the income rather than $2,000. So it makes complete sense there.
Julio said his net housing expense is $658 a month. Not many people have that. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. You're in good shape in any city. That's great rent. Our financial firefighter on YouTube says, just get started. Find someone that is investing at a distance and piggyback on their system. He invests in Pittsburgh, over 4,000 miles away. Yeah, because he's coming in from Hawaii, where Hawaii has the most expensive homes in all the United States. The average house in Hawaii is $950,000. So yeah, you have no option but to invest 4,000 miles away in Pittsburgh. Yeah, if you've got boots on the ground, you've got friends, leverage their network, their realtors, their property managers, and you'll be. That's a great system. Like and now, for me, if I want to invest in Pittsburgh, I'm going to reach out to a financial firefighter and say, what's your system? Like, This is networking 101. This is what real estate investors do, is just talking to each other and asking these questions. So definitely.
Yeah, that's why I'm going to visit Tom in Toledo.
Because he's got a bunch of properties there.
Of course I'm going to look there. Like, of course I'm going to, trust my friend who's been doing this for almost 20 years.
Yeah. I agree. All right. Well, guys, we're going to be doing this every Thursday. Let us know your questions. Give Lauren at Adulting is Easy a follow. And why not Real Estate Maxi as well? I'm Alan Corey, and thanks for tuning in. And thanks for all your
guys.
questions.
See you next week.